We're finishing up our series today on how to ruin your life. And if you've missed any of them, I would highly encourage you to go back and just listen in, either to the podcast or get on the church app or the YouTube channel, whatever it is. But go back over, because I think even though each of them is a standalone message, I believe you will begin to see a theme that weaves from one and through the other and all of them together, and see that the things that we do that may seem a little thing here and a little thing there all begin to have an effect. And all of these things will lead us to either have a great life in the Lord and an abundant life, or it can lead us to completely ruin our life. Today, the last one that we're going to be talking about is this idea of hang with fools. How many of you had Spanish mothers or grandmothers that said the following? Dime con quién andas? Isn't that amazing how that's built in? Dime con quién andas y te diré quién eres. Now, may I say, that is not Bible, okay? And for those of you who didn't have a Spanish mother or grandmother to say that, basically the translation is this, according to Siri. Tell me who your friends are, and I'll tell you who you are. Or tell me who you hang out with, and I'll tell you who you are. The way it says it in the Bible is the following, in Proverbs chapter 13, verse 20. He who walks with the wise men will be wise, but the companion of fools will be destroyed. Would you say that with me, and let's read it all together? Ready? Like you mean it? He who walks with wise men will be wise, but the companion of fools will be destroyed. Once you've written those two things down, I want you to put your bulletins down again, because channeling my inner Marcel, I'm going to preach you a whole message that didn't fit on here, and then we'll get back to it. Okay? And here it is. This last couple weeks, I went in and did a search for every time the Bible said fool, fools, foolish, foolishness. And it appears 196 times in the Bible, that word or some derivative of that word. And it's amazing as you go through, and I actually went through every passage and every story and things that it was related to. And it's amazing how many foolish people there were in the Bible. For example, you see Aaron in Numbers chapter 12, verse 11. It says, So Aaron said to Moses, O my Lord, please do not lay this sin on us, in which we have done foolishly, in which we have sinned. Now let me give you a little context. Miriam, his sister, and Aaron had been following Moses, their baby brother, even though he was 80-something years old. And Moses had been placed by the Lord in a position of leadership over Israel, taken them out, gone through the desert, all kind of things. And one day, the older sister and brother said, why do you get to be in the position? We're in the same family. Why aren't we up there where you are? And so they kind of complained. Complained to God, complained to him. Why are you getting all the face time? Why are you getting all the prominence? We're in the same family. And what did Moses do? Didn't try to defend himself. He just went before the Lord. And the Lord immediately turned to Miriam, and she began to turn leper. Leprosy broke out all over her body. This is when Aaron goes, I got on the wrong side of this issue. And so he goes to Moses and admits, I have done foolishly in this. Please don't hold this against us. And Moses went to God, and God said, okay, Miriam, you go outside for 7 days. You live outside away, and we'll keep going. That was foolish. Listen, Moses didn't want that position. He didn't want to be the leader. God placed him there. And when God places someone there, don't try to get in on it, because God knows what he's doing. You keep going, and you read through, and you get to the book of 1 Samuel, and you find King Saul. King Saul in chapter 13 had waited because he wanted to get the Lord's blessing, and he was waiting on Samuel to get there to do some things before the Lord. And so when he did this, Samuel didn't come and didn't come and didn't come. And Saul is going, I'm beginning to look bad. We're all prepared. We have all the animals. We have everything set up. So I am just going to do the sacrifices that Samuel's supposed to do. He wasn't supposed to do that. But he just could not wait. And so he jumped ahead. And Samuel said to Saul, you have done foolishly. You have not kept the commandment of the Lord. For now the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever. And instead, it was a one-generation king, and it was over. You say, well, then David stepped in. Yeah, David had some issues too. King David, when you get to 2 Samuel, David now is prominent. He's the king. He has everyone. And God had said, listen, don't depend on your strength. Don't depend on what you can do. Always depend on me to fight your battles. It said, but he sent out and said, let's have a census of everyone that is among us that can fight. I don't think they had a citizenship question on the census, but they did want to know who all was there. And so they did this, and he started counting the people that he could count on. And then after he got the report, he said, I have really not done well. And he said to the Lord, O Lord, take away the iniquity of your servant. I have done very, very foolishly. You can't go through the Bible and find foolish people without stopping a minute to visit in on Job and his household, particularly his wife. And here's Job's wife, and he's lost all his stuff. Everything has kind of come crashing down. And his lovely wife comes up to him and says, listen, why don't you just curse God and die? Aren't those wonderful words of encouragement? Just curse God and die. And he said to her, you speak as one of the foolish women speaks. Shall we indeed accept good from God, and shall we not accept adversity? In other words, are we just going to praise God when everything's good and then complain when things are bad? That's a very foolish thing to do. Accept just the good, but not think that some bad is going to come along with it. But hey, as you go through the Bible and read about all the foolish people, you have to admit, we are all foolish. At one time or another, we are all foolish. Why? Because we're born with foolishness. That's why it says in Proverbs 22:15, foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child. The rod of correction will drive it far from him. But let me tell you something. You don't have to learn how to be a fool. It comes natural to all of us. It's just there. Okay? Now, as you go through a long list like this, you begin to notice something. And it's this. It's one thing to act foolishly. And it's quite another thing to be a fool. And the Bible makes a difference as you go through it. Since a companion of fools will be destroyed, says the verse, then we need to define carefully who is truly a fool. Now, at this point, I hasten to say, Jesus said, be careful who you call a fool. Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, listen, you can't just go and call someone a fool and think that that's going to be okay, because it's not. But it's one thing for me to call you or you to call me a fool. It's something else when God spells out in His Word and gives us a very clear description of a fool to where we figure out, oh, He's talking about me. And so today what I would like us to do is to go through the book of Psalms and the book of Proverbs. Not going to go through the whole Bible. Just those two books give us enough to fill up these 2 pages. And just see, who does God say a fool is? Because if I'm not supposed to be a companion of fools, I need to know who it is I'm supposed to hang with and who I'm not supposed to hang with. Because hanging with fools will ruin our life. So let me give you a few things. Number 1, a fool says, there is no God. Now, before you get mad at me, I didn't call you a fool. God said it in His Word. And it says in Psalms chapter 14, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt. They have done abominable works. There is none who does good. On the other side, in Psalm 92, verse 5 and 6, it says, O Lord, how great are your works. Your thoughts are very deep. A senseless man does not know, nor a fool understand this. In other words, God has placed so much, it tells us in the New Testament, He has made it so obvious in creation and the way everything else is, that to sit and look at everything God has done and come to the conclusion there is no God, you're being extremely foolish. God has made it clear that He is there and how He works. We just choose not to look at it. On top of that, in Proverbs 14:9, it says, fools mock at sin, but among the upright there is favor. In other words, the fool, when things are wrong and things are done wrong, he just laughs about it. He just makes fun of it. Proverbs 19:3, the foolishness of a man twists his way, and the heart frets against the Lord. I find it very interesting that the people who are constantly advocating that there is no God seem to have a real issue all the time fighting what obviously to them doesn't exist. They're constantly fretting about something that they say doesn't exist, and yet God says, no, I am here. You are going to deal with me. You will deal with me now, or you will deal with me later, but I am here, and at this point am making myself completely known to you so that you don't continue to walk down the foolish path of thinking that you are all that there is. You keep moving, and you keep figuring out these passages, and you find this. A fool despises wisdom, counsel, and instruction. A fool despises wisdom, counsel, and instruction. It says so clearly in Proverbs 1:7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Further on in the chapter, how long, you simple ones, will you love simplicity? For scorners delight in their scorning, and fools hate knowledge. Proverbs 12:15. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but he who heeds counsel is wise. 15:5. A fool despises his father's instruction, but he who receives correction is prudent. Proverbs 18. A fool has no delight in understanding, but in expressing his own heart. See, a fool is a self-centered person. A fool doesn't want to know what others believe, what others think, what others know. Does not care what God says because they've already made themselves the center of everything. Fool. Third, a fool follows his heart and desires. This is where we began our series 7 weeks ago. In Proverbs 28:26, where it says, he who trusts in his own heart is a fool, but whoever walks wisely will be delivered. In Proverbs chapter 7, we have the story laid out about a simple man and a crafty woman. And it says in verses 21, with her enticing speech, she caused him to yield. With her flattering lips, she seduced him. Immediately he went after her, as an ox goes to the slaughter, or as a fool to the correction of the stocks, till an arrow struck his liver. As a bird hastens to the snare, he did not know it would cost him his life. I'll never forget, we were in Peru one time in Lima, and we were staying at a hotel downtown, a large group of us, and my room happened to give out to the main street. And I've always loved the city, and I just sat there at my window one night, just watching the cars, just watching the people, watching things go by. And there was a man who walked by, and he was not from the city. You can tell the country people and the city people, he was not a city person. And he was walking down the street, and a lady who had been there on the corner for quite a while, as he walked by, she said something to him, and he kind of slowed his step, and she said something else to him, and he turned around. And he said something else, and he kind of walked back to her, and they walked away together. And I thought, there's a simple man walking into a trap, not knowing that he will literally, at times, lose his life. But let's just not put the men down as fools, because the same thing happens, but in reverse. You know, the flattering lips of a woman will affect the man. Well, it does the same thing the other way around. When you're at work and you're at your job or something, and somebody at the job says, "My, you look nice today," and you go, you know, nobody said that to me in who knows how long. You know, you're really good at what you do. Well, thank you. The flattering lips begin to work both ways, and little by little, the fool falls for the game and loses the life they had. Proverbs 10:23. To do evil is like a sport to a fool, but a man of understanding has wisdom. And the verse that Marcel finished with last week, Proverbs 26:11. As a dog returns to his vomit, so a fool repeats his folly. Wow. A fool says there's no God. A fool despises wisdom, counsel, and instruction. A fool follows his heart and desires. A fool insists on being heard, even if he or she is wrong. They insist on being heard. Proverbs 12:23 says, "A prudent man conceals knowledge, but the heart of fools proclaims foolishness." Proverbs 13:16, "Every prudent man acts with knowledge, but a fool lays open his folly." Proverbs 14:3, "In the mouth of a fool is a rod of pride, but the lips of the wise will preserve them." Verse 7, "Go from the presence of a foolish man when you do not perceive in him the lips of knowledge." Verse 8, "The wisdom of the prudent is to understand his way, but the folly of fools is deceit." Verse 16, "A wise man fears and departs from evil, but a fool rages and is self-confident." Verse 33, "Wisdom rests in the heart of him who has understanding, but what is in the heart of fools is made known." 15:2, "The tongue of the wise uses knowledge rightly, but the mouth of fools pours forth foolishness." 15:14, "The heart of him who has understanding seeks knowledge, but the mouth of fools feeds on foolishness." 17:28, "Even a fool is counted wise when he holds his peace. When he shuts his lips, he is considered perceptive." Now let's stop here a minute. You want to look really smart? Shut up. Just be quiet sometimes. And if you really want to add something, go, It just makes you look so perceptive. You just look so wise when you just can be quiet. But it's amazing how fools just can't. They just can't. 19:1, "Better is the poor who walks in his integrity than one who is perverse in his lips and is a fool." 29:20, "Do you see a man hasty in his words? There is more hope for a fool than for him." Let's stop here just a second. It's real easy. When you read these verses, it's like seeing a silhouette, and then it gets clearer and clearer. And some of you, or some of us, I'll be honest, you're sitting here, and as you read these, you go, I know who it's talking about. I know who these verses are all written about. And let me help you. God didn't write a whole book in the Bible for one or two people. There's a lot of these people around. And some of them come to this church. And sometimes they even stand up here. We all have the tendency of being foolish. But let us be careful and not fill the definition of a fool. A fool is constantly fighting others. Always fighting. Always bickering. Always lashing out. It says, "A fool's wrath is known at once, but a prudent man covers shame. A fool's lips enter into contention, and his mouth calls for blows. A fool's mouth is his destruction, and his lips are the snare of his soul. It is honorable for a man to stop striving, stop quarreling, since any fool can start a quarrel. A stone is heavy, and sand is weighty, but a fool's wrath is heavier than both of them." 29:11. A fool vents all his feelings, but a wise man holds them back. Russell, I know those words are hurtful and I'm just venting. Really? Really? You're just venting? Yeah. God talks about you in the Bible. People hate it when I say that. You know, God talks about you in the Bible. Why? Because when we're the type of people that we just got to let it all fly, God says that's not a wise person. That's not wise at all. And in the process of fighting others, a fool always hurts others. Always hurts. Proverbs 10:1 says, a wise son makes a glad father, but a foolish son is the grief of his mother. Whoever hides hatred has lying lips, and whoever spreads slander is a fool. The wise woman builds her house, but the foolish pulls it down with her hands. A quick-tempered man acts foolishly, and a man of wicked intentions is hated. He who begets a scoffer does so to his sorrow, and the father of a fool has no joy. A foolish son is a grief to his father, and bitterness to her who bore him. One of the funny things in family life happened when my son got married. He got married and went on his honeymoon and came back the next week, and one of the first things he did was call his mother. Said, "Hi, Mom." And she said, "Hi, how are you doing?" And he said, "Mom, I'm sorry." And she said, "Sorry about what?" He said, "Everything. Just everything. Just take all my teenage years, all my foolish moments, all the dumb things I did, just sorry." You know, being a fool is no fun for the fool, and it's certainly no fun for anybody else. Fool. You go, this message really isn't an uplifting, encouraging, let's laugh through it all message. No. Now you know what happens when you go through 196 of these things in the Bible. It's kind of interesting when you take Proverbs, and I've had people come to me and say, "Russell, I just don't like Proverbs. It's just too confusing. It talks about one thing and then talks about something else, and I never get the full picture and what's going on." And you're right. There's something about that that's right. But you want it to make more sense? Then do a study on a particular subject. Go through the entire book of Proverbs and pick a subject. Maybe it's on laziness, okay? Let's say I want to study laziness. Go through the entire book of Proverbs and everything that has to do with being lazy. Just kind of put them all together and put laziness, and then read them all. That's kind of like what happens here with being a fool. Or you can do one about being wise. Or you can do one about any number of subjects. And after you've done all of that, publish it, because a lot of us would like that book. There was one years ago, and it was called Listen, My Son. And it was just simply somebody had done that. And they had gone through and taken the book of Proverbs and put it by subject so it was easy to read. And when you see what it says, and it's all together, and you realize this is not Russell calling me or someone else calling me. This is God describing me. or God describing them? It's always clear. And then we go back, and we have two questions. Are you a companion of fools? Think about the people you hang with. Think about the ones that are around you. The ones that they do things and you go, well, yeah, they have this little problem with anger, but, you know, that's just how they are. Really? Did you ever have your mom tell you, now listen, son, listen, daughter, don't get in a car with somebody who has been drinking. Don't get in a car with someone who has an open container or a drink. Why? Because if you get stopped by the cops, who gets hung? Everybody. Well, that's not fair. Revert back to life lesson number 1 in my book. Life's not fair, and then you die. It's just not the way it works. See, if you hang with fools, if you are constantly making excuses for the actions of people, then maybe you shouldn't be hanging with them. Well, I'm trying to reach them, and I understand that. I'm not saying we can't be with anybody that shows any of these signs, but I'm saying this. If you're trying to reach someone, if you're trying to bring them to the light, bring them to wisdom, if you're trying to do that, I suggest it be better than you one with 3 fools. Do it another way. Pull them away, and you get 3 wise to 1 fool, and see if you can help pull them up. Because it's always easier to pull someone down to their level than to pull someone up to your level. I remember years ago, and I think it was so far along that nobody here would remember it. But I remember we did a little study at my house as we were getting ready to go back to school. And it was entitled, Where There's a Will, There's an A. Anybody that far back, remember? Anybody? You ate everything in my house that week, and we went through this. But where we did this, one of the premises was this, that if you walk into a new classroom, teacher looks out on the class. Everybody in the first row starts with an A. Everybody in the second row starts with a B. If you're in the 5th row back, you got a lot of work just to get up to not much. You're going, that's not fair. Don't worry about fair. It's just the way it is. So start off. Now, if the teacher moves you, that's fine, but the impression will be, here's an A student. I can put them somewhere else. And it's funny, some of them go, do you think that'll work? I said, I don't know. Let's try it out. And I had some of them come back and goes, you know, I think it did. I think the teacher thought I was a lot smarter than I really was. I said, hey, it worked. It's a good thing. At the end of the school year, every year, I get to speak to all the 5th graders leaving CML, Center for Modern Languages. That's one of my jobs. And so I stand up here, and I'm supposed to say to this group and pour words of wisdom in about 2 minutes that's going to make a difference in their life. And you know what I go back to about every 5 years? It's this one. Because you're about to walk into middle school, and the people you hang out with will end up determining more than about anything else you do in middle school and above. Bev here? No, good, then I can talk. When I was in high school, I didn't know Beverly. I had a girlfriend. My girlfriend was number 1 in her class every year throughout high school. won a full ride scholarship to the college of her choice, and she picked medical school, and it was fully paid for. You're going, you're so smart. Now listen to this. Just hanging around her made me smarter. She would say things like this: you're welcome to come over to my house, but bring your books because we're going to be doing homework. You know why my GPA was higher? I did a lot of homework. You're going, you're so brilliant. Listen, recess was wonderful when you're doing homework. Spending time doing the right stuff is better for you. Be wise. Are you a companion of fools? We started the series back 7 weeks ago, and we started off in Psalm 1:1, and we talked about what it meant to hang with someone, to have companions. And it said, blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers. Now, let me remind you of these three things. Number one, it says, walk in step. If you find yourself living just like those who do not acknowledge God, you're headed down the wrong road. If there is no difference between your attitudes and your thinking about things as it is with those who do not acknowledge God, you're walking in step with the wrong crowd. Second, who stands in the way. In other words, taking the same positions as those that disregard God and His Word. Third, it says, sit in the company or feel right at home with those who are far from God. Listen, if you don't watch that carefully and you walk, stand, and sit with people that the Bible has already said, these people are fools, it will ruin your life. It will happen. They will drag you down more than you will lift them up. But the second question is this: are you the fool that people shouldn't be a companion of? Are you the person that God is warning others to stay away from? Russell, are you calling me a fool? No, I'm not calling you a fool. I've let God describe what a fool is. Now, look at the selfie. Is it you? See, as we saw at the beginning, when Aaron realized, I've been a fool in what I'm doing, that was the first step to changing. If you look at these things that the book of Proverbs is saying and you find yourself there, if you feel uncomfortable when these verses are read out, then stop and ask yourself the question: who needs to change, me or God? See, we don't have to be fools. We can be wise. We don't have to just walk through life and be like everybody else or just be like what makes us feel the best. In fact, we make more of an impact in this world when we are wise and walk like wise and stay with God. I was reading this morning, so often we want God to take our positions. We want Him to be on our side. When there's a ball game, when there's an election, when there's anything going on, we do, and if we have to, kind of like Balaam and Balak the king, we try to maybe do some sacrifices and make some promises and pray a little harder and fast a little longer, and maybe with prayer and fasting we can get God on our side. Let me help you out. There is no sides with God. There is God. Now the question is, are you and I going to get with his program? Are we going to be on the outside as fools looking in? It's not about sides. Not at all. Listen carefully to this.
The determining factor in your trip this year is probably residing in the last 15 text messages on your phone. You think about those 15 names that are the last 15 people that have texted you. Or if you're in my generation and you don't text people, you actually just talk to them. You have to think about the last few conversations you had, the guys you played golf with yesterday, the guys you're planning that fishing trip with, the guys that you hang out with, whoever it is in your zone. Those people are going to determine whether or not you make it all the way to where God wants you to get this year or not. Because the scripture says that clearly. He who walks with the wise, or she who walks with the wise, will be wise, but a companion of fools will suffer harm.
Think about that for a second. I don't know if you have to look at your phone or remember, but who do you hang with? Who do you hang with? Who are you surrounding yourself with? Because that group of people, the way they speak into your life, the way they talk, the actions they do, that will determine to a great extent what happens in your life. If you hang with fools, you will suffer harm. Let's pray. Lord, I come before you now, and I ask you to please take the mirror of your word, not my words, your word. And Lord, help us to hold it up and see, first of all, ourselves clearly. Help us individually not to be the fool that others should be avoiding. Second, dear Lord, help us to hold the mirror of your word up to those closest to us. Not that we may judge them, but that we may make an intelligent, wise determination into how close, how much influence we're going to allow them to have on our life. Lord, I pray that we would be willing to step away if needed, that we would speak up when it's called for, but step away as needed if those around us refuse to listen to you, to follow you, to walk in your way. Lord, I pray that we will not ruin our lives by doing those things that will eventually lead us to ruin. And I thank you for it all in your precious name. Amen.